Thank you very much. And it's a great pleasure to be here and an honor to be on stage with you, Renat. Before we dive into our fireside chat on carbon markets, I will introduce the two of us and South Pole and Lightrock briefly. So Renat is the CEO and founder of South Pole and has founded South Pole back in 2006, right?
That's right, yes.
Originating as a spin-off from ETH, if I'm not mistaken, right? And you have grown the company since then. Today, South Pole is the largest climate action project provider that also yields carbon credits, but that's one of its important legs. The other one is actually advising companies on their decarbonization journey and to reach net zero, and also public entities, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you, today, it's incredible. You have 18 offices worldwide, over 700 employees, and you've helped reduce 170 million tons of CO2 so far, which is, I think, more than 4 times Switzerland's yearly emission rate. So that's really an impact created. And we're very curious to hear more about this in a moment. I represent Lightrock. We have partnered and invested in South Pole earlier this year in a minority stake and are working together since then. Lightrock is a global growth equity and impact investor, originated also from a spin-off from LGT in the princely house of Liechtenstein. Today with 2 billion assets under management, investing in companies that drive technology innovations in 3 areas: planet and climate, where one of our most important investments is South Pole, but also people, so healthcare innovations and education, and then productivity, which is technological innovations which especially help small and medium price enterprises to become more effective in their operations. We typically invest 15 to 50 million tickets in growth stage companies. And I'm part of the European investment team and focused on climate mainly. So enough of introductions. Let us start. Maybe you want to take a seat. So today we will speak about carbon markets. And if we go into that, so we are here right after COP26 and Glasgow, right? And especially since the pandemic, a lot of attention has risen on climate change, finally. But you have seen it already much, much, much earlier in 2006. I would be curious to hear your story, Renat, and also especially South Pole stories from then until today. And also, are you as concerned as back then, or are you a bit more confident? What is your view and what is your story?
So thanks a lot, Estrella, for your intro, and thanks everybody for joining this great conference. Thanks, Marco, for organizing. And actually, our story goes actually back much longer than 26. We were students here in Zurich at the ETH in the 90s. And the truth is, anybody with just a basic understanding of physics and chemistry could easily understand in the 90s that climate change is absolutely happening. The science was very clear already back then. And the question is, what took us so long? Where have these 20 years gone between us completely understanding science and now finally the whole topic catching fire? So what we did actually back in 2002 was we created the My Climate Foundation as a startup. It was a student project back then. And South Pole 26 was actually not only a spin-off of ETH, but also a spin-out of My Climate. The reason was, back then, we were running out of projects. That was basically pre-financial crisis. Mm-hmm. Maybe some people remember, but climate was already a little bit, got traction back in 2006, 7, 8. And South Pole was created really initially as a project developer. And perhaps for those of you who wonder, why is this company actually called South Pole? What's that point? It stands for our double purpose. And the purpose of South Pole is climate action and climate justice. Mm-hmm. South Pole stands for the South Pole, where the ice is basically, we want to keep it there. We don't want it to melt away. But South Pole also stands for the global South, people in the global south have not contributed much to climate change, but are now suffering the consequences. So the initial idea of South Pole was, let's reduce carbon, let's use international mechanisms to finance projects, and let's make sure that people in the global south benefit the most. And that was always our purpose, to marry the topics of climate action and climate justice.
And to the question of being concerned or less concerned, what is your position?
So, in terms of concern, I have perhaps two contrarian answers. Very obviously, had we taken action back in the 90s, back in the early 2000s, we would be at a very different place. And over time, I don't know how you feel about that, but have you observed these curves, the emission curves? They always go up, 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 and then comes your year, and then they go up one more year, and then they go massively down. I've seen these curves for the past 20 years, and the only thing that changed is the curve moves forward and the slope gets steeper. That's the only thing that changed. And that's very frustrating. And so the first answer would be quite frustrated. Why are we just like kicking the can down the road? But what then on the more optimistic side, and I think, frankly, it's conferences like this. I mean, look at the lineup. Look at the startups we have here. This is only Zurich and Switzerland. Look at the amount of young, dynamic, powerful entrepreneurs and their investors who are rocking the boat right now. So I'm as convinced as never before that this time we can actually get it right. It is the money is here, the ideas are here, the market is here, people are willing to pay. So I think we have this one last big chance and we're going to use it.
Thank you. And that's actually also quickly to touch upon why we invested in you and partnering with you, is because we share this view that one is, of course, the decarbonization journey and transformation of many businesses and the innovation in that field. But as important is your one lack of activities, right, which is carbon offsetting carbon projects, which are actually one and maybe the only way to also put money into these important projects and make them actually also bankable, right? So we want to talk about carbon credit markets specifically in this chat. And so my question to you, probably one of the experts, biggest expert in this field, how have these markets evolved, and how do you see their role going forward? And maybe also touching upon what measures are necessary, to have the highest effect.
Right, yeah. So Marco asked before, who knows what the carbon credit actually is? Who actually knows it really? And I'm asked this question because there's one special feature of carbon credits which gets completely misunderstood. A carbon credit is a financial instrument. That's what it is. And it's a very powerful financial instrument. I'll give you an example. We heard before, just on the last panel, Brainforest and other companies who are planting trees. Let's take this example. Let's think of us being in Ghana, where we have farmers who have cocoa trees, all sun, bad for the soil, bad for the harvest. Everybody knows you should plant shade trees. That would help to solve the problem. Now, and everyone knows it's actually a business case. It's after a few years, you'll getting more yield out of your field if you have shade trees, like classic regenerative agriculture. Now, who is financing that? Who is financing that? Which pension fund goes to Ghana and pays and gives them a loan? Who takes equity? I'm talking about a cooperative in Ghana.
Possible.
Would you finance it?
It's probably very difficult, right?
Even Lightrock, as an impact investor, says, a Ghanaian cooperative. I'm not sure. Carbon is going where no other financial instrument is going, because we can offer this deal. We can say, okay, we prepay the shade trees for the cooperative. We don't even want your money back. We only want the carbon back. So we're giving you essentially a grant backed by carbon. And so this financial instrument can de-risk deals that nobody else can de-risk, perhaps except for donations. Of course, you could always hope for a donation from somebody, but outside of donations, and that's the power of carbon. And we should really, really see it that way, because as a de-risking instrument, it's very powerful. And if it scales, we can finally go out and finance those projects which currently simply are not bankable. That's why it's so powerful.
And I think from what I understand, and also quoting, for example, the Task Force for Scaling Voluntary Carbon Markets, that estimates that the demand for these carbon credits, right, will increase significantly. I think factor 15, they say, by 2030, and 100 by 2050. Yes, creating 50 billion demand by 2030. So demand is scaling. What about the carbon, the supply of the projects, right? That's from how you described it, that doesn't seem so easy either. What is your view on that? I mean, you're clearly the largest developer, but maybe also beyond like the entire market. What is your view how that can meet this demand?
So we have to say, we're coming out of a different phase, I have to say. And South Pole was among it, right? We saw the Kyoto Protocol coming in and going out. We saw the financial crisis, and the problem was that right in 2011 and 12, a lot of developers created new carbon projects, hoping for the Kyoto Protocol to get extended, and it didn't. And that created a massive oversupply in credits, which lasted for many years. And as a consequence, prices went down. Yep. And we saw crazy prices like $2, $3 for a ton of CO2. What is that? I cannot finance a proper project with $2 and $3. It doesn't work like that. And the whole industry was suffering from this overhang. And a lot of people started criticizing carbon markets. I know it's not moving money. Yes, it's not, because you cut the demand away. So now this has changed. Over the past couple of, I would say, even months, we have seen such an increase in demand that more or less the entire old supply is now gone. So if you want to get a carbon credit, you actually got to finance a project now. Oh. And so now we are just entering this space where finally each and every new ton of CO2 that people want to reduce has to transform into a new investment. And that's really an interesting time we're entering now. So if this is true, and I strongly believe that some people even say carbon markets might at some point be more valuable than the entire fossil fuel industry. It's possible. If that happens, we will have a very interesting, as I said, powerful tool for financing large-scale forest protection, reforestation, mangrove replantations, climate-smart agriculture, and all the other great projects.
And I see Marco looking at us. We are already at the time. Maybe if I made the one closing question for you is, right, as we have a lot of actually tech players as well and startups. What is the role tech can play in the carbon credit market? And I think with that we close it, right? Yes.
Yeah. So obviously South Pole is involved ourselves. So anybody with tech, please talk to us. We might have a deal. On the carbon credits, there's two, I would even say 3 major things tech can do. The one is on the monitoring verification, improving satellite imagery, improving to understand what the satellite sees, calculate that into functioning methodologies. The second one is, we called it aggregated platforms. So, for example, digital platforms which could cover the entire space of, for example, agriculture, so that for a farmer it becomes very easy to tap into the tool and create finance for planting those shade trees, as we discussed. And the third thing is something you might have seen also a few weeks ago. There was a new blockchain-based company called KlimaDAO. We also look into new technologies which could create entirely new market systems that might be more fungible and might ease the speed with which funding is channeled. And of course, that's upstream. And downstream, when we talk to companies, the big push is, of course, for digitizing the solutions we have. In our dreams, every company should, on the cloud, be able to have very easy access to whatever they need to decarbonize and make a difference. So summing up, tech has a very, very big role to play, both in the decarbonization and in the creation of the financial instrument of carbon credits.
Thank you very much, and I see we're at the end.